Coming to the very first topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to why innovation matters for India. Currently, if you look at the world order, the race which we are witnessing right now among different countries is primarily that of the technological race. You see what is happening between US and China. Now, what you'll have to understand is that with the coming of new and emerging technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, what we'll have to understand is technology is playing a very important role with respect to the national power. When we talk about India, India has definitely made a lot of progress with respect to the technological domain. We are focusing upon the innovation part, but still there are certain issues. For example, if I were to tell you, in India, what we are finding is that we have the policy intent, we have the entrepreneurial skills, the spirits, but still we are not able to match the global requirements. Still, we are not able to influence the global technology domain. Still, we see that the private participation in India with respect to the research and development is very minuscule if you compare it with the other countries. So therefore, if India has to become what we call as the Vishwaguru, it would have to significantly invest in this particular domain. We'll have to see, first of all, what are the systemic issues, what are the challenges, and then we'll have to rectify them one by one. This topic is very important, not just from the perspective of GS3, but rather also from the perspective of the essay part. Because we'll be trying to cover different aspects. We'll see, first of all, that why innovation is really important for any country, especially for a country like India, where what we boast is having a kind of a demographic dividend, very young population. Then we'll talk about that what all schemes or what all things, interventions the government has come up with in order to spur, in order to increase the innovation in the overall domain. Then we'll talk about what are the issues, what are the challenges confronting the innovation ecosystem in India. And then finally, we'll have a look at the way forward. Believe me, it's going to be a very, very important discussion. What the authors say in this particular article, which has been published in the Hindu, is that driving India's research, development, and innovation story needs a decisive private sector participation. But that's only the one aspect. We'll try to comprehensively cover it, looking at this picture from different perspective, right? First of all, that why innovation is really important. Why innovation is really important for a country like India. We have set a goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047. And when we talk of Viksit Bharat, what you'll have to understand is we are targeting a knowledge-based economy. In order to become a high-income economy, we have to focus upon the knowledge aspect. And when we talk about knowledge, innovation plays a very important role, right? If we really want to scale up to that level. Next thing which you'll have to understand is that if we focus on the innovation aspect in different domains, be it agriculture, e-commerce, the space, the defense aspect, it overall enhances the capability of a nation. What innovation does is that it determines the productivity growth. It determines the industrial competitiveness. It determines the defense capabilities of a nation and the overall power structure, right? So it helps in the economic growth, because once you have innovation, definitely you would try to integrate technology in various processes, and that would significantly increase the efficiency of the overall system, right? Then we have the global competitiveness. We are not just focusing upon the domestic competitiveness. We'll have to focus upon global competitiveness. We'll have to make sure that whatever products we are manufacturing, they should be competitive at the global level. They should be competitive with respect to the product which is being produced by Bangladesh or Vietnam or any other country or even China, right? Then we have technological sovereignty, very, very important. If you really want to focus on becoming the superpower, or what you call yourself as Vishwaguru, you'll have to make sure that you have your own indigenous base of development with respect to technology. Right now, what we are witnessing is we are dependent upon the imports of core technological platforms. I'm saying core technological platforms. Be it the information technology, be it the hardwares. Let's just talk about the electric vehicles, the battery storage systems. We are focusing upon clean energy. There's no doubt about it. But what about the solar modules? What about the cells? We are importing from China. So we are still dependent upon the imports with respect to the core technological platforms. Then we have high skill jobs. Right now, what we have is we are witnessing a job polarization where we have the low skilled workers. For example, let's talk about the delivery partners. We call these startups that they are focusing upon the technology. But in the end, what they are creating, we have numerous delivery partners. You tell me that what skill a person is gaining by working as a delivery partner. Are we focusing upon the skill acquisition or skill enhancement? No. On the other hand, we have the high paying, technologically intensive jobs, but very few in number. The AI scientists, the engineers. So there is a job polarization. So we'll have to make sure that we skill our workforce. We integrate technology, and that can only happen if we focus on the innovation aspect. I hope it is clear. But still, not everything is bad. There are good signs also. There is a silver lining. Once we look at the key indicators, what you'll find is, according to the Global Innovation Index, which is released by the World Intellectual Property Organization, in 2025, the GII, India was placed at 39th position out of 138 countries. 39th position out of 138 countries. And this we have seen a significant improvement as far as the year 2015 is concerned, because we were at 81st position. So we have basically got to 38th position. And second thing which you'll have to understand, again I'm repeating, from 2015 where we were at 81st position, now we are at 30th position according to Global Innovation Index 2025. Second thing which you'll have to understand is, according to the same report, we are the top performer as far as the low middle income countries are concerned. Third thing is that we are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Third largest startup ecosystem. And we are one of the countries where we are witnessing a very good trajectory, a very good growth rate with respect to the venture capital funding, the angel investors in different domains. So these are the four things which you can understand, right? But as I said, there are striking contradiction in the research, development and innovation domain. How? I'll tell you. On one hand, we have the strong government commitment, and there is no denial to this fact. Government, especially in the last 10 years, has been focusing upon spurring, increasing innovation in different ecosystems through various schemes. Let's talk about through various policy interventions. Let's talk about the National Semiconductor Mission or National Mission on Critical Minerals. So government is definitely doing that. We have entrepreneurial spirits. We have different startup founders coming up with various ideas. But what we find is that when we look at the outcome, it is again suboptimal. And this is a kind of a paradox, that on one hand, you have the government supporting the players. We have different schemes. Government is definitely providing the funding. But still, we have suboptimal outcomes. Suboptimal, weak core innovation outcomes. Why? When we talk about the overall spending with respect to the research and development, it is still very less in India if you compare with the other countries. Let alone, we are not comparing ourselves with US or let's say South Korea. Over there, definitely they're developed countries, advanced countries. But even if we compare ourselves with countries like China, we have very low participation of the private sector. Once we talk about our influence in the global technological domain, it is very less. We are not influencing. Definitely we are working. We have come up with various startups in the AI domain or the other domains. But still, if you look at the overall picture, it is not good. We have weak participation of the private sector, as I told. We have low R&D spending. And we have very minuscule influence as far as the global technological domain is concerned, right? So this is a kind of a paradox, a contradiction which exists. Now, the root cause, it is no longer the lack of policy intent. ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई policy intent नहीं है. There is policy intent by the government. Government is definitely trying to focus on these areas. But what you'll have to understand is that there are issues with respect to the execution. Policy doesn't work, the implementation works. And the same thing goes with the civil services aspirant. You must have seen civil services aspirant, making very good timetables and very good plans and everything. But it would only work once you implement that. So you'll have to implement, right? And industry engagement. Here I'm talking about the private sector. Private sector in India, it is not engaging in the overall innovative aspect. in the overall innovation domain, right? There is very less participation of the private sector. So this is overall thing which you'll have to understand. These are the indicators. You can just have a look. Now, what have been the government initiatives? And this is a promising push, definitely. The very first is with respect to the financial support, because at the very base lies the financial support, right? So we have come up with the Research, Development and Innovation Fund to the tune of almost 1 lakh crores. Then we have almost a corpus of 18,000 crores with respect to deep tech startups. Deep tech startups, I'm talking about in terms of the artificial intelligence, cloud computing, quantum computing, right? Then we have tax incentives. We are giving tax incentives to various startups and corporates if they are investing in the technological domain, right? Then we have investment in the digital infrastructure. You talk about the laying of the internet cables, BharatNet, or you talk about the fiber optics, right? You talk about the infrastructure. We have gone with the India stack, right? We have the India stack. Once we talk about the Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile, Jam Trinity. So we have been working in this domain, definitely, right? Government is trying its best to make sure that we have, it's actually providing the base on which you can create technologies, on which you can innovate, right? Next, we have talent and early innovation. We have been focusing, you must be aware of the Atal Innovation Mission, AIM, Niti Aayog's. Now, Niti Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission, it has one of the component which is Atal Tinkering Labs, which focuses upon increasing the entrepreneurial skills, increasing the interest of students in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, from classes 6 to 12th. So it is coming up with various labs and various instruments so as to make sure that children develop the interest in the STEM domain, right? Next, we have the regulatory reforms. What we have done is, previously there were entry requirements, that if you want to avail some benefits with respect to with what the government is providing as far as a startup is concerned, you should be in existence for a period of 3 years. Now we have removed that. Let's talk about the Shanti Act. Once we talk about the expansion of nuclear power is concerned, now we have allowed the private sector participation as operators as far as the nuclear energy is concerned. So definitely government is broadening the base, and this would definitely make sure that we have more of innovation in the domain. But there are challenges, there are deep challenges. The paradox, high intent versus weak fundamentals. These are the challenges, right? Because we have a question, and over there you would be asked what are the challenges. So these are the challenges which we would be discussing in great detail. The very first thing which you'll have to understand is that we have low R&D intensity. We have very less investment. We invest very less in the R&D, in the research and development, when we compare ourselves with the other countries. We have only about 0.64 to 0.65% of GDP. This is the only investment we have in the research and development, 0.65%. And for countries like South Korea, it's almost 4% of GDP. For countries like Japan, it is 3%. For countries like US, it's 3.5% of GDP. And even for a country like China, it's almost 2.5% of GDP. Look at the overall corpus of the GDP of China, right? And 2.5%, it's huge. The overall GDP, once we compare the overall GDP of China with that of India, it's huge, mammoth. And over there, what they are doing is they are investing almost 2.5% of their GDP in the research and development. And we are, at first place, we have a low GDP. Second, we are investing just 0.65%. So again, this is a cause of concern. Because if you really want to compete with other countries at this point of time, where we have the emergence of new technologies, be it artificial intelligence, cloud computing, we have different data centers coming up, right? So you'll have to invest in innovation. This is indispensable. Okay? Low investment limits cutting edge research. Obviously, if you'll not be investing properly in the research and development domain, how would you be able to compete with the other countries? Let alone other countries. I'm not talking about other countries. How would you be able to manufacture those items, those goods and services, which are more efficient as compared to the others? So this is again a cause of concern. Then we have weak private sector participation. This is again a very serious cause of concern. Once we look at the countries like US, over there in the overall investment, once you're talking about the overall investment, more than 70% of the investment comes from the private sector. For a country like China, the private sector contributes to almost 77% of the overall investment. Can you imagine? More than 3/4 of the overall investment in the research and domain in these countries is coming from the private sector. Whereas for India, this is almost 41%. And this has recently increased, primarily because of the government interventions. Previously, it was almost 1/3, 33%. So you'll have to understand, in India, we have the government, which is the dominant investor. The dominant investor as far as the research and development is concerned. And this is a cause of concern. Because ultimately, see, government has its own competitive priorities. Sarkar ko bhai, it has to invest in agriculture. It has to invest in social sectors. It has to invest in building roads and infrastructure, pipelines and everything. It can't be doing the research work just on its own. We have centers of excellence in terms of the Indian Council for Agriculture Research. We have the Indian Council for Medical Research. We have DRDO and all other organizations. But we'll have to make sure that there is also, and if not, at least equal participation of the private sector. That is again very, very important. Second thing which you'll have to understand, which comes to my mind, is that in India we see the reluctance of the private sector. देखिए, अगर आपको कोई चीज, if you have to basically come up with a very disruptive technology, right? If you're coming with a very good idea which has a potential to disrupt the market, what you'll have to understand is that these technologies require a lot of time. What we say is that they're having a long gestation and they are very risky. It requires very good amount of capital. Okay? First thing, as I told, that it requires a lot of capital. Second, it has a long gestation period. Now in India, first of all, we have the enterprises, जो भी companies हैं, different corporates. What you'll have to understand is they have a very myopic vision, very myopic. Myopic means short-sighted. They are just focusing upon a very short-term orientation. They just have a very small, narrow outlook. They are not looking at long-term benefits. So they are not investing in technological domain. Okay? First of all, they have lack of capital, and whatever capital they have, they are investing on those things. आपने सुना होगा, you must have heard that we focus on frugal innovation. Frugal innovation मतलब भाई लोग थोड़ा बहुत आपने incremental innovation कर दिया. In true sense, that is not innovation. Just because you know that the purchasing power of people in India is less. So you focus on the frugal innovations. For example, Tata Nano हो गया. ठीक है? Or you can talk about the portable X-ray machines. But you are not focusing upon the high risk, high reward area. So that is something which you'll have to understand, right? The psyche or the mentality of the private sector, it has to be changed. Next, we have the domestic patents versus global influence. Now, यहाँ पर there's one improvement which is there. As far as the filings of the domestic patents is concerned, we have definitely improved. So in 2020-21, there were almost 59,000 filings of the patents which were there. Now it has substantially increased to more than 1.1 lakhs, right, in 2025. So there has been an increase. But question ye hai, the question is that how far it is able to increase India's stature at the global level. Because once we talk about the global patent cooperation treaty applications, we'll find that still the number of patents which India is applying at the international level, they are very less. Right, they're very less. Almost 4,500 patents in the year 2025. For a country like China, this tunes to almost 77,000 patents. For countries like US, it's almost 50,000. Even for a small country like Switzerland, it tunes to almost 5,300 patents. The international patents. तो इसका मतलब क्या है? What does it imply? If you are increasing, if you are having a scenario where you have a good number of domestic patents and research papers, it implies that there is research going on. But whether that research can be scaled for commercial purpose, that is a question. And if the overall patents at the international level are less, it means your products, whatever research you're doing, it's mostly theoretical. It's not pragmatic. It's not practical. It's not something which can be easily commercially scaled to a product or a service. तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. अगर आपको स्केल करना है कमर्शियली एट कमर्शियल लेवल, so you'll have to make sure that you invest in different aspects in the practical application of that technology, right? So this is again a cause of concern. Commercial scalability is a cause of concern. Then we have weak university industry linkage. Yes, very, very important area. Another point of concern with respect to the innovation aspect in India is that whatever we are teaching in the college and institutes, in fact, in the top tier colleges, including the IITs or the NITs, in some of the IITs, definitely there is cutting edge research which is going on. But still, if you look at the overall picture, there is a kind of a mismatch between what the industry wants and what they are teaching. They're still focusing upon the theoretical aspects. They're still focusing upon those obsolete topics which are not really relevant in the current world. So these are some of the areas, right? And we suffer from three issues. We suffer from three issues in terms of, first of all, that we have a very poor IP ecosystem, intellectual property ecosystem. Okay? Intellectual property ecosystem बहुत poor है. Second, we have a very fragmented structure, as I told you. Fragmented structure in terms of what the industries demands and what we are providing. Next thing is that even in these research centers and the institute, there is dearth of capital. भाई अगर आप चाहते हैं कि इन centers of excellence, if you really want in these centers of excellence, people should focus upon the innovation and come up with a unique product. You'll have to give them the capital, right? So they don't have the adequate capital. And that's the reason you will also find that the best minds in these colleges, sometimes they really want to work in India. But once they see all these things, once they see that there is lack of capital, there is lack of support, incubators nahi hai, startups conversion nahi ho pa raha hai, they're not able to convert their idea commercially because of different reasons. So what they do is they go to different countries. And over there, they have a lot of money. Those countries definitely provide a lot of money to them. And therefore, ultimately, they decide to stay in those countries itself. We have most of the founders, the founder of Perplexity, right? So you'll have to understand, we have the best of the brains of India who go to those countries and work over there. So this is again a very important issue which you'll have to understand, right? So these are some of the issues which are basically plaguing the academic aspect. So in those countries where you will find that the innovation is at a very good level, you will find that there are three aspects which are given equal importance. Pehli cheez kya hai? Pehli is the academics. Over there, they are giving very good amount of focus as far as the academics is concerned. Second, what they are focusing upon is the industries. The industries themselves are providing the adequate capital. And third, they're also focusing upon the finances. The government is definitely helping with the finances as far as these startups are concerned. Next, we have the human capital gaps in innovation. Again, very, very important factor. Human capital gaps, what I'm trying to say is that even in India, we have certain issues. And even the Global Innovation Index report talks about India. We score very poor. We have a very poor ranking as far as we have rank 95 as far as the employment in knowledge intensive sectors is concerned. So we are not having adequate employment opportunities in the knowledge intensive sectors. Rank 80 in the number of researchers. We're not having the adequate number of researchers, right? Rank 101 in the employment of women with advanced degrees. This is also something which you'll have to understand. There is gender disparity which is there in the STEM domain. Women are not getting the equal opportunities. So there are issues, right, according to GII. And this I told you with respect to India. Gender diversity challenges. We have different schemes. For example, we have Vidushi. Now, Vidushi is a scheme which focuses upon it encourages and supports the women from the years of 42 to 65 years of age to come and join the research ecosystem in the STEM domain. Then we have, for example, the other scheme. We have WISE scheme, right? We have WISE scheme, Women in Science and Engineering. So this particular scheme focuses upon making sure that we reduce the gender disparity in the STEM domain. This is by the Department of Science and Technology. But the issue is, what you'll have to understand, that these schemes are quite nascent. They have just come almost they've just come before 10 years or let's say before 5 years. So it's a very small time to judge the effectivity of the schemes, whether the schemes would be able to bring some result or not, right? Would they be able to increase the participation of women in the overall domain, in the overall innovation domain? That is again uncertain, right? Then we have the structural weakness, lack of industrial transformation. देखिए in India में, and see again I'm elaborating on these issues so that you have a clear picture. See, the very objective of analysis is to make you understand the whole story, right? What is the context, what is the issue, what are the challenges, and what should be done, right? So over here, we are trying to focus upon the analysis part. Once we talk about the structural weakness, if you look at the pattern of the industrial development which India has seen, you will see that we have shifted from the agrarian to the service-led model. We have not focused adequately on the manufacturing domain. And that is what the government is trying to do. Government is trying to increase the gross value addition of the manufacturing sector in the overall output. That is what the government is also trying to do. So, abhi kya hai, once we compare ourselves with the East Asian economies, you take, for example, the case of the mainland China, or you take the case of Japan or South Korea or Taiwan or Hong Kong. What they did initially was that they had a kind of the industrial development which was based on labor intensive sectors. Again, I'm repeating it. They focus upon the labor intensive industrial development. ठीक है, तो initially उन लोगों ने क्या किया? They focus on the labor intensive industrial development. Once their population began to stabilize, then they switched to the capital intensive. Then they basically made the integration of technology. And then they worked upon the technological progress. But in India, what we have seen is we have directly jumped to the technological aspect. And in that sector too, we're not performing well. So we are having a services-led model. If we had focused equitably on the manufacturing domain, things would have been different. And that is the reason government is trying to focus on the manufacturing aspect, right? East Asian economies, I've already explained. Then we have the biggest fault line, the weak research to market linkage. This is again very, very important. See, if you really want your idea to succeed, if you want that your idea should basically succeed in terms of the profits, you have to make sure that it is easily transferable from lab to the market. If your idea is not in a condition to be transferred from the lab to the market, it won't succeed. What is really required, or what the scenario in India is, that definitely we are focusing on the research. We are focusing upon the development. But once it comes to the commercialization aspect, once it comes to the scaling, over here we are suffering. So we are not able to commercially scale that technology, primarily because whatever research we are doing, it is still theoretical in nature. It is still not based upon the pragmatic needs of the society, the practical needs of the society. The second factor can be that we don't have the adequate capital. Whatever capital we have, that is very minuscule. That is not adequate, because these technologies are having a long gestation. They require a good amount of risk capital, which we don't have, right? Then these are the missing elements. We don't have a proper ecosystem with respect to the intellectual property. We don't have the adequate risk capital. We don't have the industry clusters. East Asian economies का एक और फायदा था, एक और perspective था, that they did the development on the basis of the industrial clusters. So they focused upon the economy of scale, right? So that is something which you'll have to understand. Other hurdles, if we talk about, we have the bureaucratic procedures. There is fragmented governance. Let's say we have Department of Science and Technology. Then we have Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, if Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology wants to come up with a particular scheme, it would have to coordinate with the Department of Science and Technology. But there are coordination issues. There is fragmented governance. We have a federal structure where we have the state governments. Sometimes the policies of state governments do not align with that of the central government. So there are these issues. Then there are socio-cultural challenges. In a country like India, and this you would very well understand, we focus more on job security. And that is the reason you see that why so many people are striving to qualify the government services exam. We do not give adequate importance to those careers in the research. Have you seen, you would have rarely seen parents saying that they want their child to become a scientist. But you would often hear parents saying that they want their child to become an IPS or IAS officer. So that is the kind of psyche we have. We are not focusing upon the research careers. And we are also not encouraging the women to enter the STEM domain, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So ये एक scenario है which I try to explain, and again you can just have a look from this particular part also, right? But the good part is we have the silver lining. We have certain emerging opportunities, sunrise sectors in terms of the space sector startups. We have Agnikul. We have Dhruva Space, right? Many of the startups have been coming in the space domain, and space domain through the in-space has been, broadened. There is participation of the private players. Then we have deep tech innovations. Recently in the Global AI Summit, Impact Summit, we saw the Servam AI, the indigenous platform. So these are good, news, and definitely these are the linings which would encourage the other entrepreneurs in the domain. Then we have future technologies. We are definitely now focusing upon for example, the 6G. We are coming up with the standards, new standards with respect to 6G. So if India would do so, definitely it would enhance India's position in the overall domain, right? Now, what should be the way forward? करना क्या चाहिए हम लोगों को? It's not just about increasing the R&D spending, it's about substantially increasing. You'll have to increase your R&D spending to the tune of almost 2.5% of GDP. At least match that quantum with respect to China. I'm not saying in terms of the overall quantum of money, but I'm saying in terms of the percentage of GDP. At least 2.5% of GDP. And how you can do so? By coming up with various mechanisms. Government cannot do each and everything. The private sector would have to step in, right? And what is really required is we can go with public-private partnerships for different projects. We can give more of incentives to the corporates, that we would give you incentive if you focus more upon the R&D, right? There can be different mechanisms, tax incentives, right? Then we have the strengthening of the private sector role. Again, PPP, innovation linked procurement. For example, we have the government e-marketplace, GEM portal. So over there, you focus on these things, that you just make it a condition that our procurement, whatever procurement the government is doing, it would be based upon those enterprises which showcase certain innovative abilities. So this would be an indirect push to these SMEs, to these enterprises, to focus more upon the entrepreneurial aspect, to focus more upon the innovation. Okay? Then we have building a strong university industry ecosystem. What we can do is we can open technological transfer offices. For example, we have the placement offices, right, in different colleges. Why not come up with the technology transfer offices? Why not have the collaboration between various industry houses and good colleges on a PPP base, where the government also invests? Let's create the centers of excellence, where let's say Mahindra as a company, or let's say Tata as a company, collaborates with, let's say, IIT Madras or IIT Bombay, or even other colleges. So that is how you will make sure that there is, the industry is going to tell that what we really demand. Why we are still relying on the imports of technology. Can you provide this to us at a more economical price, right? So this should be definitely done. Collaborative labs. Then we have deep tech focus. बहुत हो गया, we have focused upon Tata Nano and other things. Right now we need radical shift. There is a need for a radical shift to those areas, deep tech startups. भाई focus करिए artificial intelligence पे, focus on cloud computing, data centers, because this is the future. AI is the future, right? Then we have human capital development. We'll have to promote STEM. We'll have to make sure that in almost each and including these state universities, in all colleges and institutions, we have certain STEM courses. And not just STEM courses. We'll have to make sure that they are in line with the market needs, with the current needs, right? Then we have women participation. We have definitely good schemes for the women participation in the STEM domain, but we'll have to look into their efficacy. Are the schemes doing something? Just before a few days, I read an article that the government of India came up with a particular scheme with respect to the participation of women in the STEM domain, but the funds have not been released for years. So if you have scheme just on papers, nothing is going to happen, right? Then we have strengthening the innovation financing. We need patient capital funds. You should not be, impatient with respect to the outcome of these innovation. कि भाई अभी invest किया, get the returns. No, they require a lot of time, and they are very risky areas. So you need patient capital. You need those venture funds which can invest for years. There has to be continuous sustained funding to these startups and the other institutes also. Then we have risk sharing mechanisms. By risk sharing mechanisms, we mean what? That some amount of risk should be shouldered by the government, or there has to be a kind of a pool in where different players come and they share the responsibility if the enterprise fails. So we'll have to take the responsibility. Then we have create innovation driven industrial policy. We cannot just focus upon the assembly. तो अभी तक हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? We have been doing the assembly. We have been importing the raw materials. We have been importing the components, and then we are assembling them. No. Right now, this is the time that we focus upon the designing and the manufacturing aspect. Very, very important. You must have seen the iPhones where it says design in California. So we'll have to design in New Delhi, right? Or design in Hyderabad or Bengaluru. We have very good innovation clusters. Government is doing that, but we'll have to focus on that. Ultimately, what we'll have to understand is that we should not just limit ourselves calling ourselves as a startup nation. We have startups in different countries. Rather, we'll have to focus upon deep tech innovative power. If we really want to attain that status of Vishwaguru, we'll have to focus upon technological sovereignty. Or technological sovereignty के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? You have entrepreneurial spirits, you have a good policy intent, but there are weaknesses in the system. There are systemic issues. तो आप उन issues को rectify करिए. Only then you will be able to achieve this particular status, and only then you will be able to be technologically independent. Because right now we are having a lot of dependency. So I hope it is clear. Let's have a mains practice question. We had a very comprehensive discussion. Now I really want you to write the answer. India's innovation challenge today is less about policy intent and more about structural and execution deficits. The issues. Discuss the factors responsible for India's underperformance in research, development and innovation despite strong government initiatives. We have discussed the paradox, the challenges, these, right? Suggest measures to strengthen the industry-led innovation in a country. The kind of content we are providing, it's very easy for you to write the answer because almost, it is in the same structure of the discussion. The question is framed in the same structure. So I would really urge you, I would really advise you to write the answers. And yes, if you're liking the discussion, please do not forget to press the like button and also let us know in the comments. Let's now go to the next topic.